In this full-length edition of Tropics Topics right here at One Nation Weather, I'm going to have a little bit of a different style from my normal videos here on the channel. If you're familiar with my USA weather forecasts, normally I kind of cover the information. There's some edits. Don't get me wrong, we're going to cover the information here as well, but we're just going to get right into the info. No effects, no edits, no intro, none of that except for what I just did. And let's get right into the headlines here for our June 27th of 2024 as I filmed this video around 7 p.m. Eastern time. What we're looking at is two areas to watch in the tropical Atlantic. The first one is Invest 94L, an area to watch with a 30% chance of development near the Yucatan Peninsula there of Mexico coming out of the Western Caribbean. The other area is Invest 95L. It's newly designated, but actually already has an 80% chance of becoming a tropical depression out there in that MDR region, the main development region of the Atlantic, while approaching the Lesser Antilles. It could eventually become a tropical storm, probably named Beryl, or maybe even a hurricane as it moves past those islands there. As you can see, there's that red area. It's our main area of concern for this video, Invest 95L. Just in the next 2 days here from our afternoon update on June 27th, there is a 60% chance of development as this approaches the Windward and Leeward Islands there, those Lesser Antilles. In the 7-day range, there is an 80% chance. That is what I expect to rise just going to the 8 p.m. update, which will be out right after this video. Then over there with Invest 94L, again, you notice it's in the yellow shade. It's been in the yellow shade for quite a while, moving through the Southwest Caribbean. Not much of a chance of development out of that. In fact, as we kind of look at the satellite view through the middle to the back half of our afternoon here on the day I filmed this video, Thursday, June 27th of 2024, here is your Invest 94L in the Western Caribbean, and I'm about to zoom in on it right here as I circle. As you can see, we've got disorganized, keyword disorganized, showers and thunderstorms from really parts of Central America, some of these heavy and producing some flooding concerns, all the way on up there to around Cuba, coming out of Hispaniola as well, and tracking pretty slowly on off towards the west. This thing is a slow mover. If it gets itself together, that's likely going to be in that 3 to 5 day range more than likely as this heads towards the Yucatan Peninsula, then off of it and into the Southwest Gulf. That's going to be the main discussion I have out of that system in this entire video, because the main point is this, what I just circled right out here, halfway between Western Africa to the coastlines there of our Antilles, the Windward and Leeward Islands, I should say there, in the Eastern Caribbean. Right there, that system already a tropical wave expected to develop here in the next likely 2 to 3 days, if I had to guess at the latest. Let's go ahead and go over to WeatherBell Maps where you can get a free trial for maps just like this down in the description. Let's start off just briefly looking at what we've got going on here in the next 12 to 24 hours out from when I filmed this. First of all, again, there's all that messy activity that I just circled close to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. Some parts of Central America also dealing with some flooding issues, especially as you go with terrain. We'll have that landslide, mudslide concern, whatever you get with the topography in those areas. Expect some of that in at least isolated, scattered fashion, but this area I circled out here, this is your tropical wave, Invest 95L, soon to become what is likely going to be Tropical Storm Beryl, assuming our other weak area doesn't become that first. I would definitely not expect that, though. That's already going on Friday here through, again, that main development region of the Atlantic, but it's going to be moving to the west at a pretty good rate. It's going on the underside of a high-pressure system there in the Atlantic. And again, over there towards the Yucatan Peninsula, that's going to continue pushing towards Mexico, coming out of Saturday into Sunday and Monday. But underneath that high-pressure system out here in the Atlantic, zooming in on this, we're going to likely have, you see that L there on the screen, an 1,000 to 1,010 millibar low. That's what we've been seeing on the European model. Around 1,005 indicated by this model run from the midday here on our Thursday. This low is likely to become a tropical storm, and the European model indicates that this could happen again as early as late Friday heading into Saturday. The GFS agrees with that as well. I really think that 2-day development chance is going to increase to around 70 to 80% just right after I filmed this video, because of how quickly this is expected to at least become a depression or storm as early as the early time frame of the weekend. Now, we're probably going to start to see some of those bigger swells get going Saturday and into Sunday here on all of those Windward and Leeward Islands. The waves are definitely going to be picking up there, maybe even in towards the greater Antilles there, places like Puerto Rico, towards Hispaniola. We'll start noticing the wave heights increase going towards Sunday, maybe some gusty winds on all of these islands before this even arrives. Notice, though, heading out of Sunday through the middle of the night Sunday and then into early Monday, that's when we're likely to see this low somewhere near all of those Leeward and Windward Islands here of the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean there, separating us from the main development region in the Caribbean. For those of you who aren't familiar, you see all that precip all over these islands, from Anguilla all the way down there to Trinidad and Tobago, islands in between, Barbados, all these spots. Looking at heavy rain, gusty wind, probably some tropical storm conditions for most of these islands. Again, likely going to peak around Monday early in the day as of the current models. Again, things could change, so be aware. Really from late Sunday all the way through early Tuesday. That looks like the window right now for the Windward and Leeward Islands. Now from there, we're likely to see this continue to make its way into parts of the Central Caribbean around the middle of the night Tuesday, heading into early Wednesday, July 3rd here. Definitely no impacts to any sort of July 4th plans in the United States. That's a given here. But we could have some impacts out here around that same time frame to some parts of the Caribbean. This is, again, Wednesday, July 3rd in the early morning. The ABC Islands there, the northern tip of South America, could be seeing some heavy rain, gusty winds from maybe a hurricane here, as the European model indicates. As far north as Cuba and Hispaniola, though, be on alert, even the Bahamas. It does look like, as of now, this track that the European model shows is a fairly good idea of where the storm could be around the end of next week, heading towards Thursday, making an approach to Central America. But there have been tracks on other models that have that system and the one behind it that you're seeing here that could move through parts of the Windward Leeward Islands into the Antilles Wednesday and Thursday. And that track could be a little bit further north and go towards parts of Cuba, surrounding areas towards the Gulf of Mexico, even parts of the far western Atlantic near the Florida, Georgia, and Carolina coast. I think that's more of an outlying scenario here on our ensembles, which are a collection of models gathered into an average. But it is definitely not impossible either, and that's why we need to track down the line exactly what could occur here. Now let's go with track guidance here from weathernerds.org and go day by day here. Again, I'm filming this video June 27th. That's why it says that in the top right corner. But what we're looking at here is the likely location based on a collection of models that forms our European ensemble members here for Sunday, June 30th, 2024. Notice where we're likely to see what's expected to become, and I'm just going to call it Tropical Storm Beryl here, still a couple hundred miles plus southeast of some of our Leeward and Windward Islands there, especially the Windward Islands. That's where it looks like we'll see most of the direct hit out of this down there closer to South America. You can see by Monday, pretty much moving directly overhead. I would assume that this would be sometime in the morning to the midday, but again, things can change. The models have been indicating, though, that this would be around midday Monday again, but we'll definitely see some wobbling in the time frame of the impacts from this tropical entity there for the islands in the Eastern Caribbean. And then by Wednesday, July 3rd, again, we're getting into July now, looking at the system tracking on through parts of the Central Caribbean. This is what I was just showing you with this European model by itself. Notice that these ensembles members, they're really not too far apart. The furthest south that they're indicating this could be is right around those ABC Islands coming out of Wednesday, or coming out of Tuesday and into Wednesday here, as far north as around Jamaica to Hispaniola. I really don't think the direct hit is going to happen to any of these islands here, whether it's the Hispaniola or Jamaica area, but down towards the ABC Islands, that's a little bit more of a higher chance for at least some more direct impacts from the system. Then as we go towards Saturday, July 6th, we're really getting out into the territory here, which is, again, why when you hear me saying some of these statements, don't take them 100% because things will change as we get closer. I cannot stress this enough to the event. But look at this. Here's your cone of all the ensemble members here. We've got some stray ones that go up through the Bahamas as a strong system. We've got some that go towards the Florida southern coast, heading towards the end of next week and into the upcoming weekend. We've got some that take it over the Yucatan Peninsula and towards the Gulf of Mexico, threading the needle between Cuba, Yucatan Peninsula. That is definitely also a possibility. So there's a lot of different outcomes that could come out of this. And that's why, really, beyond the 5 to 7 day range, we don't want to, make assumptions and assume this is going to hit the U.S. or not, because it is really uncertain for the U.S. and really elsewhere beyond the 5 to 7 day point. This is your model intensity guidance from tropicaltidbits.com. Notice how by the time we go out of Friday and into Saturday, again, this is within that 2 day window from when I filmed this video, it is really looking likely based on these models that we're already going to be seeing a lower and tropical storm ongoing here into parts of the main development region of the Atlantic. But as we go Sunday and into Monday, as impacts make their way there toward those Windward and Leeward Islands, the Lesser Antilles, it's looking like we could see a Cat 1 or maybe a Cat 2 storm on our hands. I do think there's one thing that could prohibit a little bit of that development, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But certainly count on a strong tropical storm all the way up to maybe a Cat 2 or 3 at the max for this storm. Around that late Sunday into Monday time frame. I think Cat 3 is a little bit too much. I think low-end tropical storms a little bit too low. So I would go with around a Cat 1 as being a good thing to expect, and definitely not something you want to sleep on there in the Lesser Antilles, because that is a strong system. You're talking sustained winds that could be upwards of 70 to 75 miles per hour, gusts even higher. Nothing you want to play around with. this thing could get even stronger going into Tuesday and Wednesday while sitting there and heading westward, I should say, through parts of the Caribbean. So a lot to track, and one of those things is that Saharan dust. This is a model that kind of shows where dust is going to be down the line. This is going towards our Saturday, June 29th of 2024 in the early morning. Notice we've got some dust, according to this model anyway, that is a pretty reliable one for at least Saharan dust, right ahead of where our system's going to be. On the bottom side of where I just circled there, that's where we've got the system likely to be as Invest 95L still, possibly trying to become a tropical storm already, working against a lot of that dust. But by the time we get towards Monday, I really think as this tries to make its way towards the Caribbean, that dust disintegrates a little bit. The stronger dust, those bigger plumes are behind the system. So it and that little wave I was showing you behind it will definitely have some more conducive, but not perfectly conducive conditions to work with heading westward there. So definitely a little bit of a prohibitor there in terms of some of the development. But moving on from that and taking a look at a GFS model run from a little bit earlier today here on our June 27th, jumping ahead towards our July 4th time frame. Again, no impacts likely to the USA out of the system, maybe other than some rip currents if it's near this location around that time. But anyway, what you're seeing here is that we have a lot of possibilities. I showed you that with the tracks on those ensembles earlier. It's really uncertain whether this is going to go into Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula, the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, especially if it makes it to this point where it's around the Yucatan Peninsula as well as Cuba or trying to thread the needle here. This is an outlying scenario. I want to make that certain with you here that this is an outlier in the models that we've seen. However, while it is an outlier, it is not impossible. So heading towards the northern parts of Mexico as well as South Texas here, this GFS model scenario, we're actually seeing this with a brand new model run that's coming out as I film this video, indicating that we could see impacts through to South Texas and northern Mexico, again, with a weakened state of the system after crossing, say, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. In terms of U.S. coastlines that I think need to be watched, right down there towards the Florida Keys and parts of Miami over to Tampa at the furthest north out of that circle that I just drew even there. That's where I would be maybe watching for a graze of some impacts, and then over there towards Louisiana and especially the southern Texas shores. Those would be the two spots where at least a graze of impacts look the most possible right now. Things could change. We could see impacts to a lot more U.S. locations than that, but overall it looks very unlikely that there's many U.S. impacts at all. But again, it's very hard to tell as well when you're 7 to 10 days out. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts as you've been hearing throughout this video. If you want to stick with me for all my USA weather forecasts as well as tropical updates in the future, hit that subscribe button for more. That's it for this video. Stay safe out there. Subscribe to the channel.
One Nation Weather.